You like my two shoes?
You're gonna be kicking footballs anytime now.
Oh,
So you're not wearing two shoes.
Yeah.
I don't like socks.
Well, just
Okay.
that's what you do. I know, so I said.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our council meeting tonight. We've got a full gallery, which is great to see, and it's a beautiful day out there, so that's even better that we've got people showing up for tonight. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor McKinnon, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. You've had time to read the minutes of the April 2nd meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that the minutes of the Adelaide Metcalfe Council meeting held on April the 2nd, 2024 be adopted as printed. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Nordoff, all in favor, and that's carried. And just as a side note, Councillor Brody is unable to be here this evening. He had a previous engagement. So we have two actual delegations tonight, and the first one is the Middlesex Federation of Agriculture, and we have Patrick Berkeley tonight. And if you just want to come up to the microphone there, if you push it, it'll turn red, and then you'll be able to be heard by everybody. So Patrick, welcome. And before you get started, I just wanted to pass along a thank you from the community for the MFA hosting the all candidates meeting at Brook Alvinston the other night for the provincial upcoming by-election. It was very, very well attended. And you're planning to make sure everybody got a piece of homemade pie is very impressive. So congratulations. So I'll turn it over to Patrick now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for letting the MFA come to speak. Patrick Berkeley. I get this job because my farm's on one side of the township office and my dad's barn that I'm looking after is on the other. So I go by fairly frequently. Updates at the MFA. We did a bit of a rejig, so I'm now the president there. So yeah. We know what split pickings are like now, but yeah, so what are we up to? One of the more interesting things that started to become apparent is the fact that agriculture is unique, and I think we understand this intuitively in rural Ontario, but we've got other county federations in Ontario that are closer to Toronto where they're running to the issue where so the issue that came up that sort of took farmers by surprise around Toronto was that they were starting to be charged for stormwater management fees. Farmland, traditionally, we've got drainage and we have all these things, but soil is also a sponge of water. It rains, it absorbs in. And so there was varying degrees of that being, that money being charged, and municipal councillors in those regions weren't even necessarily aware. It was one of these things that got slipped inside of a recommendation from consultants onto the, and so because there's so little agriculture in some of these spots, it just sort of went unnoticed. But it was one of those interesting things that just highlighted how sometimes if you aren't familiar, you don't even realize what's different about agriculture compared to industrial development or some of these other things. So I think for the MFA, we definitely want to try and get our message out there that what agriculture is, why it's unique, and why it's valuable. A couple of things we've been funding continually have been there's a Food for the Future podcast and radio show that Peggy O'Neill's got, and Dave Bolton's been on that a few times. I got roped into it once. Jason O'Neill's been on there, but it's generally it's a pretty interesting process of being able to talk about agriculture. And yeah, Crispin Colvin, our our OFA regional director's been on there. Hopefully we'll be better this year, but we did work with the county to get a bunch of field signs made up to sort of say what's growing out in the field. So for like a day and a half, there was a wheat sign in front of my field before it blew over and I didn't get it back up. But hopefully there should be some of those just so that people know what the crop is and what it's for, because it's not always completely obvious how the crop, what it's soybeans. No one really eats soybeans. So um, we also continually support farm and food care culinary tour. So that's bringing people from Fanshawe College out to see what agriculture is about. And it's been a few years since had done this, but we, in concert with a couple of the other counties in the area, put money into the Children's Museum to have a new a section dedicated to agriculture. Yeah, I think land use planning seems to always be an issue. I think the OFA's policy, and I think the MFA's as well, is whenever possible, we would like to see build up, not out. One of the ways that I've started to think about it is, unfortunately, prime agricultural land can't economically compete with development for housing. But the flip way of thinking of that is thank goodness that food is so cheap that it can't compete with all the other things. And I'm scared to ponder what the world would look like if there was a scarcity of farmland such that food actually could compete with all of the other pressures. So last issue there was a member concern in Southwest Middlesex about birders looking at owls on a pasture. And it's one of these interesting things where the birders will come and look at the interesting bird and then move on. But the photographers want to get the perfect shot, and they will sit there for 4 hours and they'll park their cars on both sides of the road and block it up. And so I know that that's an ongoing process with, and the individual that's near that has run out of their patience. But I think I know firsthand that there's a snowy owl that lives around here, and I see a few cars every now and then, and it's middle of winter. It doesn't seem to be a problem, but it is one of those things where if the word seems to get out, the photographers have social media networks where they talk to each other and they'll just camp out. And so it's one of those things that I think if there's 1 or 2 cars parked on the side of the road, we don't really care, but it can get to be a tipping point somewhere. And I don't know where that is, but it's something to keep an eye out. Yeah, I think that's about all I had to say, but questions, what do you guys need to know about?
Does anybody have any questions for Patrick? I think the Federation is to be commended for the educational piece that you provide. I look forward to seeing the crop signs out, because people in the cities and even in Strathroy don't know where their food comes from. So I think it's any chance we have to educate is a great opportunity. And it's good to hear that you're contributing also at the Children's Museum. I think that's important, because a lot of those kids, the closest they get to a farm is the Western Fair, and sometimes that's not a whole lot of exposure. So I think that's great. As for your birder problem, I guess it could be worse. It could be Bruce County with sunflowers everywhere where they take over the field. But yeah, it's more people need to respect the community that they're in. And unfortunately, they don't always know how to act. And that's too bad. But yeah, so is there anything you'd like to see from the township? Is there any ask that you have at this time?
Well, no, actually, that's kind of the nice thing coming when we don't have anything to ask for. It's a lot easier.
I'll say.
But yeah, I think, like you said, it's, thankfully we don't have those issues. I think the reason I mentioned uh, not having the ability for cops to enforce anything is maybe something to just ponder. I know that we don't really want to have no parking signs everywhere, but that might be one of those tools that would allow the cops to, or bylaw enforcement to do something in that case. So it might just be something that, if it becomes an issue, maybe give that a little bit of a thought, but
Okay,
so far it's not an issue.
all right. So last call for questions for Patrick. Okay, if not, I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight. It's always good to see you, and thanks again. Pass along to your board and your committee our thanks for what you do for the community. We really appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Okay, next up, 5B on our agenda is a delegation from Middlesex County. We have the warden Ina DeViet with us tonight, as well as the CAO Bill Rayburn. And you guys can share that microphone there. And we will turn the meeting over to you. Welcome. We appreciate you coming out tonight. I know everybody's busy, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Pleasure's all ours. And we're pleased to have the opportunity to be out in person again. This is the first time since COVID came that we've resumed the in-person visit as opposed to an online one. So the purpose tonight is the world has been changing. We've got people moving in and populations are going up, and there's stress on different kinds of services. Lots of growth has lots of impact. So we want to talk about what's been happening at the county. And I'm going to introduce, I don't think you need an introduction here, do you really? Everyone knows Bill, but Bill's going to walk us through the CAO presentation, and then we'll have some questions at the end.
Okay, thanks for having us. I think I'll just start by moving right into the budget highlights. Mike, are you moving the slides? All right. Well, that's okay.
And we're
We'll
all
get-
about what things cost at this municipality. So you're you're leading with the right card.
Sue, I know this. I've spent a lot of time with you in the counselor's lounge with other members of the budget committee. I know what's going on here. So, I think we had a fantastic budget year really this year. And we spent a lot of time doing a deep dive into a service area we haven't done a deep dive into in a while, and that's in transportation. It's the service area that has the most impact upon the county levy. So we were able to make a lot of recommendations as the budget committee, thinking about what that's going to look like going forward. If you think about the infrastructure in this county, a lot of it was built post-war. And if you think about what's coming in terms of life cycle, there's a lot of infrastructure coming due. And it was really time to sort of look at what that infrastructure model was going to look like, put in place the plans necessary, and talk about future financing for all the needs that are in the county from a infrastructure perspective. So we really had a good time, I think, Sue, at the budget committee, talking about every service. But this year we focused primarily on digging really deep into that one. And the outcome was a 2.93% tax rate increase. And if you look across all of the factors that make up the finances of the county, whether it's our debt, which is virtually zero, our tax rate, which is the envy of almost every county in southwestern Ontario and in Ontario, and half of the rate of some counties not too far from here. Or if you look at our reserves, we're in really fantastic financial shape. And that's a lot of hard work by members of our budget committee, but also the people that came before this budget committee. You know, we have I would describe that every year for the last 26 years I would describe them as fiscally conservative, and I don't think anything changed this year. And it really was a great budget outcome, I think, compared to where we started. So we're really pleased by that. Be glad to answer any questions about that as we go forward. One of the things that was discussed by the budget committee and by the council generally is whether or not we need an economic development corporation. And if we look ahead to what this year is going to bring about, we really looked at what's happening demographically and also from an assessment perspective. It's clear to me and probably clear to you when you look at our reports that from an assessment perspective, industrial assessment is way too low in this county. It is not, we're not the envy of anybody with our industrial assessment. This is all agriculture, all residential, and that mix is not great. There's some people in this room that grew up playing Sim City, and if you started with an industrial assessment of what we have, you're going to be out of the game pretty quick. And Middlesex County is going to be out of the game quick if we don't start investing more in that. And why did that happen? It really happened because it wasn't that long ago, we were in communities like this or in Southwest or North, where we were talking to them about, I remember you even in some of those meetings, we were talking about resident attraction because we were so worried about communities just falling off the map. No banks, no schools, no whatever, no recreation facilities. And we were scared that we were going to be left with, I remember those meetings, people saying, I'm worried, Bill, that we're going to be left with 3 municipalities here and the rest are going to fall by the wayside. And man, how things have changed. We've really made a lot of changes in terms of we didn't make change. We made some changes too, but we've been run over with residential assessment and new residential growth. And it was nice to hear the MFA talk about the importance of protecting farmland and going up. That's exactly what I say too. We have to focus on multi-residential and we have to focus on industrial assessment. And we're a long ways away from those days where we had to worry about residential growth in this community. In fact, we have parts of the community that are doubling in the county, 2 or 3 places that have planning applications that would double their size. That's crazy. We're a long ways. That was only 8 or 9 years ago we were talking about resident attraction. So when it comes to what we have to do going forward, Economic Development Corporation is one thing we looked at. We have to focus on that industrial assessment and we have to get shovel ready. And really, there's really only one area in the county that is the prime place for that. And it happens to be somewhere in between Adelaide Metcalfe and Strathroy Caradoc when you look at the landscape that we have. And to support the growth of new development of commercial and industrial in the county, it's really important that we really amp up our game. We have to go big or go home, I think, and a Middlesex Economic Development Corporation is perfect for that. It would bring the business community, take it out of the hands of council, really get specialists in the area of economic development instead of generalists, and try to involve the business community and the public in developing the next generation of industrial and commercial growth in the county. So we're excited about that. The RFP's out. You're going to all participate, hopefully, in helping decide what this looks like. But we're excited about that process. Development charges is another one that we're looking at. This is the first time we've ever even thought about it. But when you look at what's coming on the horizon, well, even what's happening today, when you see a turning lane go in, for example, for a new development, that's growth that should be paying for growth. It shouldn't be on everybody's tax bill. And right now, that's what happens in Middlesex County. And council said, enough of that. If we don't put in place these types of development charges now, we'll get run over with paying for growth out of the tax base. And that's not the right way to do it. That's not great municipal economics. So that report's coming forward. You're going to see that. And that'll be something that you'll be consulted on as well. The county loan program, again, I mentioned that we, in the area of residential attraction, this is the first job that county council gave me, was to develop the county loan program. And back in 98, they had just got their money from the annexation. And they said, Bill, what are we going to do with this $10 million? So I came up with this idea of a replenishing program that would support primary infrastructure for residential development, trying to get that residential assessment back that we lost. And it was a very successful program. That money now is still there. It's supported millions and millions and millions of new infrastructure. And it's the basis of what we have for residential growth in this county all throughout it. And so it's been a great program, but now we need to refocus it. And so that's part of our strategy as well, focus on different type of assessment going forward. Okay, Mike, you're doing a great job of keeping up here. So economic development, there's a couple of highlights in there. We can talk more about some of those. The sort of the FDI strategy, something that Kara will be glad to talk to you about, and the Tourism Investors Toolkit. But primarily this year, it's really our focus in economic development is going to be in bringing home the idea of having an economic development corporation. In this area, one of the things that we see a lot of need for is childcare and early on programs. Those are offered just in your neighbor in Strathroy. And these supports are really important. I'm going to say a couple times tonight, probably our demographics are changing. back when I first started here, our demographics it kind of looked like this. In the middle of in the middle of the age bracket is where most of our folks were. It was in that 35 to 55 range. That was Middlesex County when I started, big time. Now, what we're seeing is the growth in the polls. We're seeing the young families with one child we're just knocking the doors off of that that group, and you see it in the population that's coming here, because they're looking. Lucan was one of the if they were the fastest growing, I think 2 or 3 years in a row in that demographic in all of Ontario. And when you see the growth that's happening in that demographic, it really does highlight the need for those types of investments. And then when you look at our vulnerable population, includes our seniors, which is the other demographic that's really growing, our younger generation, our students and our seniors. You really can see the importance of Middlesex County Connect, which is a transit service that we're trying to get moving in this area. It's had moderate success, I would say, so far. But as we try to increase our economic development goals, that's going to be really important. But it's also important about providing that caring community. We're not, 2 trucks in every driveway anymore type of community. If we want to do multi-res and we want to go higher, as the MFA says, and we want to have a different type of affordability demographic in this, we have to also support it with these types of investments. So there's some information there. Growth is a big factor in the planning and economic development mind. As I mentioned, we've had just tremendous growth, too much growth in my mind. Our infrastructure needs to catch up in many municipalities, but you can see some numbers there about just the historic growth in this community that's happening, and happening fast. Like it hit us fast during COVID. I'm going to talk about MLPS, I think, at some point here, and I'll talk about it now. But I mean, it hit us just like a fire truck running right into the car. It was incredible how fast it happened. And there wasn't a lot of advanced warning that it was going to happen. It just happened. And what happened in MLPS with that growth was this other end of the demographic. Call volume growth went through the roof. You had people moving here that had sold their house in another community, and there a more the polar extreme of our age demographic, and that's a lot of new demand for ambulance calls. You saw other things with emergency room closures. Again, what's the last resort? It's ambulance calls whenever that happens. But then the other thing that happened with MLPS, the paramedic services, is really the complexity of the care has changed. We've seen a lot more mental health challenges out on the street and drug challenges. So as you know, this is our largest business area. We deliver it to the City of London and the County of Middlesex. And the complexity of those calls has really shot up the budget in this area, including the demand growth in ambulance. So in all of these areas, I think what we're seeing is that if we had a normal distribution of age and population, it's that middle group in the county services that don't use many services. It's the 2 polar extremes that do. And that's where we got our numbers. Like if you think about the services we provide, we have a nursing home, obviously, and we have libraries. Again, that's both extremes. Social services, both extremes. Ambulance, both extremes. It doesn't happen very much in the middle where they're using county services other than roads, of course. But the vast majority of our services are human services, and and the demand for those services is really rising. So there's some other information there about that Dirk wants to brag about. How did Dirk get 3 pages in this? I don't know. He must have wrote this, or he must have bought Paul lunch or something. But anyhow, there's a lot of information here about the GIS work that they're doing and the advanced work they're doing in digital planning, all good things, trying to reduce red tape, so you can learn about that. And then also, I'm really proud of our planning group as a whole. The idea of having a local planning group and a county planning group that's all one. We've been able to attract just an amazing group of people that the county, I won't even talk about at the local level. The county would not have been able to attract, even at our size of the planning department, the type of candidate that we're getting, because they want to be we're giving the opportunity to see every type of planning all the way through, experience that they couldn't get anywhere else. And once a month, they sit down with the planning group on a Friday morning and I talk, and it's just amazing that we've been able to get that kind of caliber there. I really am proud of them. So I talked about the MLPS program, but I didn't mention something I do want to mention, which is critical for communities like Adelaide Metcalfe, and that is community paramedicine. It's one of my favorite programs. I spend a lot of time, an inordinate amount of time over dealing with ambulance challenges. But one of the things I'm really proud of is the work that we started early in community paramedicine. It's not only a service that's a direct service, but it's also a preventative measure. How do we keep people from having to go to emergency rooms? How do we help people not have to call? And I'm sure that at some point in time, every one of us knows somebody that's used a community paramedicine service. And it's just a phenomenal program, and I know advocates for this program every opportunity I get. I'd encourage you to as well, because as we see more and more challenges getting a family doctor, more and more challenges with emergency room closures, for this size of community and this type of community paramedicine is critical that it gets invested more and more and more. And we just we're investing so much that we just are renovating now our new community paramedicine center. It's at the old, what's the address there, bit? 340 Waterloo. Thank you, Bailey. You should come to all our meetings. At 340 Waterloo, we're renovating the entire top floor of that building for our community paramedicine headquarters. And you're going to see more and more about community paramedicine, and that's great news for Middlesex County. There's a section there about Tales and Trails and the storytelling installations Middlesex County Libraries worked on. And then there's this special slide here, Morgan, on Township of Adelaide Metcalfe that Paul put in. It says that your official plan update is underway. So that must be true. Bailey's here, so it must be something about a new revised ITS policy. So that's good. And the IT service agreement. And then there's a section here about fraud prevention seminars for seniors to be held in Kerwood. We were just in Strathroy and we were talking to them about the program. I'm really also very proud of the library group. They're always thinking about the things that our citizens need that just aren't being provided in other areas. So in Strathroy, it was the income tax program where we're helping people do their income tax or providing the space for that to happen. We were talking about there. So that's a very popular program as well. And here tonight, we're talking about the fraud prevention seminar. And yeah, so that's great. And I think that's it. Our email addresses are there and we're here. And if you have any questions, either now or later, you got lots of options.
Okay, thank you, Bill and Ina. Are there any questions? Councillor McKinnon.
Through you, Mayor Sue, to Bill. You spoke about the paramedic program, and did you say the address was Waterloo Street in London?
Yes, that's where the headquarters is, but it's not that's where that, so that's not where the service is delivered out of, it's mobile service. So if you go right now, what we grew so much with community paramedicine, and just let me back up one second. So the reason why community paramedicine is important, I've explained for communities like this, and it's a mobile service where we have community paramedicine vehicles that go out, and Dustin and his crew, they all are out there in throughout the county and throughout the city. But that's their sort of command headquarters there. That's where they get managed out of, is at that 340 Waterloo. And the other thing that's great about community paramedicine is every call that we can keep from going into the 911 system, community paramedicine is 100% paid for by the province, and every 911 call municipalities pay for in big dollars. And we run a very expensive vehicle with very expensive paramedics, 2 of them, and then we spend a lot of time at the emergency room trying to get our folks into the hospital. And so community paramedicine is just a fantastic program that helps financially, service-wise, and yes, it's very mobile. It's out there everywhere. My mother tells me whenever they're at Vintage Green and Ilderton and they're out and about everywhere. So from North Middlesex to South to Adelaide Metcalfe, they're out there.
Just to follow up to that, to Bill, I understand that it's mobile, but I don't understand why the headquarters couldn't be located within the county.
Well, they could be. There's no reason they can't be. We can extrapolate this to the county building, which maybe you're going to go to next. Oh, yeah. We've been around together a long time. I think there's a number of considerations there. So let's just stick with community paramedicine for a second. We use a centralized deployment model for a lot of reasons. Most of it relates to logistics. So what we're trying to do is have all the vehicles come in, be cleaned, and have everything all happen at a central site, so we don't have to have multiple logistics centers. The most expensive part of delivering, well, one of the most expensive part of delivering a service is actually logistics and making sure that you have, in this day and age, with all the rules in place, the right vehicles that are cleaned and ready to go, including in community paramedicine. So we do use a centralized deployment model for that, but there's no reason it couldn't have been just across a line. There's really no advantage in this case for that being the situation, because I guess we could think about, we'll go to the county bill in a second, but we could think about, is there a tax advantage? Well, no, it doesn't. They don't pay taxes. Is there a service advantage? No, because we're already mobile. We're out there, and actually a lot of the community paramedicine work is with mental health and drug related that is happening in downtown, which is right around the hotspot for those is right by the YMCA, and we have the home program there. And so that is a real hotspot of where there's a lot of that work being done. And going to the county building for a second, it's a great question. And one we've been asked at least once before in our travels around. We try to look at things with a real business lens, and not like, at least administratively, we try to look at things with a real business lens. And then we put that answer up to our governance body and see what comes out. On the business side, we looked at this. We said, where is there serviced, ready-to-use land that's inexpensive in the county? And throughout the whole region, really, London and Middlesex County. We looked at where's something centrally located, because we have to be centrally located. This isn't a service center. Middlesex County's buildings lot different than the one you saw before, because we've already decentralized. So the Gainsborough garage expansion was a decentralization of our services. We now have, in planning, we have everybody in local municipalities and social services. We've moved everybody to the libraries. When you and I first started working together, it was, you go into the county building, there'd be 150 people in there on any given day. If I can count 15 now, it's really a busy day in there, because everybody's been decentralized. So the new county building is really going to be about governance. It's not about anything but governance, and maybe some corporate services, but definitely it's not a service center. And so we really like this property in next to the paramedic headquarters for a lot of reasons. One, when we looked at travel times and logistics, being right on the 400 series highways was gold. It had great visibility, because that was another thing we were worried about, was just where would people know to go for some of these things, and great visibility there. It's free because we already owned the land, because it was an unused piece of property next to the paramedic headquarters. So that's great. We had to do upgrades to the parking lot at paramedic headquarters anyway. So by combining the two properties together, we killed two birds with one stone. Again, amazing business outcome for us. We don't pay taxes anyway, so we're not really hurting the county tax base. And in fact, you could argue that if we had taken, there are very few. By the way, I started telling a story about our analysis of where there were properties available. Go out and try to find an inexpensive, serviced, ready to build on land in Middlesex County that's central, because that's Ina's municipality, that's inexpensive. That's not easy to do. Yeah, that is almost impossible to do. So when you took a real business look at this and said, where should it go? I almost said to council, it'd be better not to take one of those pieces of land out of commission that could be used for something else in the county, and we'll go to this piece of the city for all of the reasons that we said. So it really comes down to now that the synergies that were created are amazing, and that we've got all the check boxes that council wanted, and we didn't have to have a political fight at county council about where it would go, because it's not in anybody's municipality, but it's central to everybody but Lucan. And Kathy reminds us of that every time she comes to an MLPS meeting. But that hasn't changed. Yes, yeah. Going downtown was no bargain for anybody, and it won't be in the future.
Okay, thanks for that fulsome response.
Yeah, that
Um,
means it got too long.
No, that's
She does
okay.
it to me at budget meeting too.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any other questions for Bill and Ina? Counselor Kingma?
Thank you, Mayor Sue, through you to Ina and Bill. Really appreciate the time you're spending with us this evening. I know you're both very busy. I read Ina's activity report and I'm breathless. Okay. My question is concerning the Economic Development Corporation. I understand I think you alluded to this, you tendered it out.
Yeah,
You're trying to procure a consultant or something
that's exactly right.
to provide a mandate and shape the composition. Are there any lines in the sand that you and your county colleagues are insisting upon in terms of the mandate and composition of this corporation?
No, like that's a really great question, actually, because one of our meetings, I got asked, what's it going to look like? And I started to answer as Bill Rayburn, but the answer is we don't know. And like Bill Rayburn has an opinion on what it looks like what it could look like based upon other examples we see across southwestern Ontario. But that's not the point. The point is to make this for Middlesex County residents. And so if everybody decides they want county or governance people from Middlesex County on it instead of business people, that's what'll be decided. But the models that are out there are really great to look at and understand and throw darts at and figure out what works best for Middlesex County. They're all a little different, and I hope this one will be just right for Middlesex County going forward. And we have to figure out how it works with both local and with the regional type of work, because there's really three layers. I'm going into Folsom. There's really the out and up past Middlesex County, there's in Middlesex County, and then there's local. And it has to be responsive to all of that. And I guess the only wish I have is that it is responsive to all of that, that we get experts that we need in each of those areas. Because in Strathroy, I said, this all started after restructuring. People didn't know what they were going to do in the local municipalities around economic development. The county didn't do anything in economic development back in those days because there was an idea that each local municipality would develop expertise in that area that was specialist. And over the course of time, we look at that landscape and we go, we need to get specialized and we need to have a comprehensive plan across economic development, or we're going to get run over by everybody else that does do that. And that's pretty clear. I mean, if you talk to anybody at Queen's Park or you talk to anybody that's a developer of industrial properties, they're going to tell you the exact same thing. And so it's time. It's time. So we'll see. You're going to guide it. I mean, whether you like it or not, they're going to be banging on your door asking you to tell you what you think, because that's the consultant's role, is not to guide it. It's to get the feedback and then give it to council.
Okay, follow up?
Yeah, thank you. So it's my understanding in some of what I read that you're hoping this will be an agency at arm's length. How does is there a lower expectation that county would have to finance it then?
Oh, no, I don't think that's the case. I think the arm's length is actually very specific for other reasons. And I'll tell you I'll tell you at least one of those reasons now, without getting too fulsome. But the answer is that we often have a real push and pull between when you have internal economic development and planning, and that push and pull has to stop. There has to be somebody that's an advocate for a certain type of development, and then there has to be the regulatory body that has to do their job. And right now in Middlesex County, what I see and I hear from people that sit in your chairs in all across the county is it gets mixed up and it gets messy, because the regulatory people have to also be the advocate, at least administratively, and that's messy. But if you could separate those two, as they do in many other places, I think you'll see a really nice positive result, because it is tough when you're in a regulatory role to say, okay, maybe we're just going to look the other way on this, but instead there's an advocate that says, here's why we should do something different, instead of just saying, here's what our rules are. And that's really why it's important for me to have that arm's length. It's really more about that than it is about anything else. But no, it's definitely not a funding issue.
number 3.
Okay.
Through the mayor. Does an economic development corporation get more attention from upper tier governments? Is that part of our motive for, refurbishing this part of your administration?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who would argue with that. I think that the other thing, there's a lot of things about an economic development corporation that are the motive. But again, going to look at two things, really. The business component of including business leaders on this is important to me because I think that's a real critical factor because they're also the people that are talking to other business leaders that want to come to the area. They know some of the stumbling blocks and hurdles. When we redeveloped the planning group and went to the model that we went to now, I brought all the developers and sat them in a room in the counselor's lounge, said, tell us what you hate, tell us what you like, tell us why we're better, all that kind of stuff. And man, I really do believe we have the best planning model now in all of Ontario because of that. They were the ones that helped us figure it out, not Bill sitting in my black chair going, I wonder what they think is the right way to go. And I think the same thing with this role. I think that they're going to really ramp this up. That's a definite motivation. The other thing is, you're right. When you talk to people at Queen's Park, whether it be politicians or administrations, they like larger groups, less people to talk to about these types of things. And it doesn't matter what service you're talking about. You could be talking about healthcare, whatever. Like there's a reason you've seen consolidation of these things. It just is easier for Queen's Park to figure things out. And I think that in this case, we're seeing the growth of super regional economic development agencies. So you'd see Western Ontario Wardens Caucus is a group that's become super regional and put a lot of money into economic development, talking about the rural and small urban economic development as opposed to large urban. They put a lot of money into that. I know SCORE. There's been a lot of attempts to do economic development thinking from the super regional level. And then there's the local, and then there's the county. And what I think we need to do is get a little bigger voice in that level just below the super regional, because when I started here, there was massive differences between the needs of Southwest Middlesex and a Thames Center in terms of economic development. With what's happening out there and what I'm seeing, those are growing together faster than you think. If you go and have those conversations, everybody's talking about infrastructure, they're talking about transit, they're talking about affordable housing. Like that's not the case 15, 20 years ago. We were all talking about different things in rural versus small urban. And Middlesex County is becoming more homogeneous every day for the needs they have on economic development. And we're falling behind because we don't have those. The real focus is specialties. I really point to often Bailey's, it was Morgan's department when it happened, but I point to that because here I was sitting there, this is an analogy for you, sitting there looking at what's happening in the IT world going, wow, I was on a big pension board, and I was looking at what they were doing. They were getting bank level support for IT. And I'm like, holy cow, we've got like 3 generalists. And how are they supposed to keep up with cybersecurity, networking? There was like 7 of these specialties that I'm looking at and I'm going, wow, how are we going to keep up with that? We couldn't afford it on our own. So we went to the lower tiers and said, how would you like to come along for the ride? What if we all did hardware together and did all this together? This is the exact same scenario. We're going to get run over if we don't work together and come together with specialists that are at a higher level than generalists in this area. We're going to get run over fast. So that's my motivation. I want to recreate the magic of that IT model in economic development with the sort of the arm's length fun of it.
Okay, anything else? No other questions? I guess the one point I think I'd probably differ, Bill said that it's time. I think we're actually late to the party. So I think it's past time for the economic, I'd like to take a coordinated approach to this. I think I speak on behalf of all of council when I say that we've always had the best interest of the district in front of us, and we want to do what's best for the community at large so that everybody wins and everybody prospers economically. So And then the other thing I wanted to say was we really appreciate, and you did allude to the shared services that we do participate in. And just to mention planning and IT, for example, and IT is actually up shortly on the agenda. We could not get that expertise and have it be cost effective for a municipality this size. So for us, it's been nothing but a good situation. Me personally, I had to reach out to IT at the county this morning, and within 3 minutes, I had my problem solved. So
Oh,
thank
you got
very
the
much.
bat phone line
I-
now.
I-
I don't know how these works. Don't
The
kid
bat
me.
phone or the red phone? I'm
Yeah,
not really
something's
sure.
going on there.
Anybody-
3 minutes is
somebody-
fast.
Maybe they
That's
know I'm on the
fast.
budget committee. I don't know. So anyway, you don't bite the hand that feeds you, I guess,
yeah.
right? So anyway, that's all I have to sum up for now. And once again, thank you very much for coming tonight. And it has been a number of years since we've seen anybody from the county, but that's COVID driven. And to all of council, the lines of communication with the county are always open, so feel free to reach out to them or through Morgan to them. I think that's safe in me saying that. So, yeah. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
And thanks for saying that, Mayor, because I think that's the whole point of county. We have to work together and we can do more together. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate your closing comments.
Good, good.
Thank you for having us. Yep. Good
That's
night.
great. Had safe travels. And thanks for coming. Okay, next up on our agenda is the correspondence, upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. This Wednesday, April the 17th at 1 p.m., we have an Emergency Management Program Committee meeting, and those are held. Do we have them quarterly, or depends on what's going on in the community too? So,
Through or the council, they're 3 times a year, one being an exercise, so.
right. Okay. And then the next up will be on Monday, May the 6th at 7 p.m. It'll be our regular council meeting, but we'll also have an official plan 5-year review open house. And then the next item up on the agenda is actually going to be canceled due to provincial legislative changes. We're going to postpone that meeting to a later date, so stay tuned and we'll have a different date put forward once we get closer to knowing what's going on there. Next on the agenda is 6B, our recommended reading, CC number 1, Middlesex County highlights. And Bill and Dinah have done a great job tonight bringing everyone up to speed with what's going on. Also, county highlights from April the 9th, as well as March 26th. And CC number 3, the Middlesex London Health Unit, the Board of Health meeting summary from March 21st. Action required, CC number 4, we have a resolution request from the city of Brantford regarding home heating sustainability. Councillor Kingma?
Thank you. I think support would be appropriate here. The carbon tax is a excessive burden for people of modest means. And I kind of get annoyed when people of modest means are bearing the brunt of some higher purpose, climate change. We can do better.
Okay, so I'll take that as a motion that Councillor Kingma is voting that we support this resolution, CC number 4. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. CC number 5, we have a resolution from the town of Shelburne to eradicate Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Okay, could I have a motion to receive and file CC number 1, CC number 2, CC number 3, and CC number 5? Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is the staff report. We'll have our legislative clerk, Mike Barnier, discuss the information technology service agreement. And we also have, and we'll invite him to the microphone, Chris Bailey, the head of IT for the county, and he can backstop you for any questions or comments. So I'll turn it over to Mike Barnier.
Thank you, Mayor. To members of council, a straightforward staff report, just outlining the agreement before us. We have been in a ITS agreement with the county since June 2018. And as previously discussed at the delegation, this service is a godsend for small municipalities and to make it affordable for us. And usually quick service. I don't know if I get the 3-minute or whatever service that Sue gets. But pretty reliable service, and we're very happy. So I think a lot of what this agreement was, it's been back and forth. We've seen a couple revisions throughout the county to modernize the agreement, make it more sustainable, so we can count on, we can see predictable funding for this moving forward and set the rules out a little more clearly for the municipalities. The resolutions just to authorize the mayor and the clerk to go into the agreement, but I'm happy to answer questions, but Chris Bailey is here to answer questions more expertly on this agreement than I, so.
So are there any questions for Mike or for Chris? Councillor McKinnon?
Through you, Mayor Clark, to Chris, not a question, but a comment. Thank you very much for all the assistance you've been.
Through the mayor to Councillor McKinnon, you're very welcome, and it's never a bother. Even this morning when we had our chat, you said, really sorry about it, but that's what we're here for, and we're happy to help out. So
Your patience sometimes is remarkable. So thank you. Yeah, and I can't reiterate enough the cost effectiveness of it, because we couldn't afford the expertise that your department provides for us, and we appreciate that. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Kingma?
Yep, through the mayor to Chris, thanks for being here. It says, I think I read it somewhere, I can't remember now, that there are cost adjustments year end from your service. So there's a base and then there's an add-on if things happen to exceed that base amount. Do we have a history of what those adjustments are at year end? And are they pretty extreme? I can't recall.
Yeah, I can guess at the answer, but you go ahead.
yeah,
Chris.
through the mayor to Councillor Kingma, there was a 2% increase built into the agreement that you currently are under. The only adjustments outside of that have been through what's called our SOW process. So if there's a large project that's outside of the scope of the current agreement, an SOW is generated, statement of work. We basically say, we're going to do these things for you. It's going to cost this much upfront and then this much to support moving forward. Over the past 5.5 years since the agreement went in place, I actually may have a number in front of me here. I think total over that entire period was just over $4,500 over that 5-year period for a statement of work, additional programs outside of the agreement. And the new agreement has all of that built into it in the base cost. And moving forward, it's a 3% increase per year.
Yeah, and if I might add, just because for cybersecurity and stuff, there's always ever-changing things available that they would subscribe to. And the other thing at the budget committee, we challenged Chris's department to do a deep dive into subscriptions and things like that, because sometimes you have to have a certain number and like, what are we really using them all? So their department did a full deep dive on that to see what they need and what they don't need. So they do run fairly efficient, I have to say. So. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the Information Technology Service Agreement with the County of Middlesex be approved, and further that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute the Information Technology Service Agreement with the County of Middlesex. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All those in favor? And that's carried. Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to come out today and for helping me this morning. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, safe travels. Okay, next up on the agenda is the tile loan rating bylaw amendment in reference to Seldom Rest Farms. And I'll turn this over to our treasurer, Johnny Pereira, at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, through the council. This report and pending documents probably look very familiar. They did come to council on February 20th of this year. Due to the timing of the approval, OMAFRA temporarily suspended the TAL loan program until the 2024 provincial budget was passed, just ensuring that this program was still going to be offered. So the bylaw and associated documents attached have just the updated date changes to reflect the delay in improving this. And we're also recommending the repealing of the original bylaw that went forward to council as well. But the recommendation is to approve the report or receive the report and approve the bylaw as presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, is that clear to everybody why we did a revisit here because of the gap in the timeline of the provincial budget? Okay, as long as you understand. Okay, are there any questions for Johnny? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that the proposed tile drainage loan rating bylaw to lend $50,000 to Seldom Rest Family Farms Limited for a term of 10 years at 6% interest be approved. And further, that the original bylaw 11 of 2024 be repealed. And further, that the mayor and treasurer be authorized to sign the tile drain debenture and the offer to sell documents and submit them to OMAFRA. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Well, Mike Barney, I'd like to say something. Go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly note through the mayor to council that in the same vein, our motion has been supported by close to 15 municipalities so far. We can provide our follow-up report once I see them start slowing down the resolutions coming in. Thanks.
So just to elaborate, that's to increase the tile loan from $50,000 to $100,000 because it hasn't been changed since 2004. So it's very outdated. So that's good news. Hopefully we get some more people to support that resolution. Okay, next up on the agenda is 7C, and it's the fire tanker truck purchase. And I'll turn that over to our chief, Dan Parker, at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through you to council, our report for fire tanker purchase. And before I start, I'd like to thank a special thanks to Coulter Cahill for lending me some huge help through this whole process. So, the Adelaide Metcalfe Fire Department prides itself on delivering excellent and reliable service to residents and visitors of the township. In late 2023, staff brought a report forward to council regarding replacement of the tanker truck in 2024. The tanker truck has been in operation since the year 2000 and is due to be replaced based on the township's council approved asset management plan, and its replacement has also been identified in the fire services review. In 2024 capital budget, council allocated funds towards the purchase of a new tanker truck. Tenders and quotes were issued in compliance with the township procurement policy. The township issued tender RFT 11/2023 in December of last year for the purchase of a tanker truck. This procurement process unfortunately resulted in 0 responses. When the township posts a procurement policy or process that results in 0 responses, it causes staff to thoroughly review the procurement process and the project's purchase specifications to determine if there are any materials issues requiring adjustment. After a thorough review of the tendering process and after speaking with a number of the vendors, it was determined that the vendors were experiencing some challenges with the specifications outlined in the tender. Consequently, we reissued the tender in January 2024 with minor adjustments to the purchase specifications. The tender was reissued on Thursday, January 18th, 2024, and closed on February 12th, 2024 at noon. This tender process resulted in 4 responses received. Unfortunately, all responses received were over budget. However, given that all responses were over budget, township staff, following the procurement policy, were able to negotiate with the lowest bidder to make additional specification changes to get the required equipment within budget. After working through the process, Fort Garry Fire Trucks out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, has been identified as a successful respondent, coming in under budget and meeting our purchase specifications. Delivery date for the new tanker truck is set for 18 to 20 months from the date of the purchase sign off. And based on the bid received, we are under the budgeted amount of $575,000 by $10,282, HST not included, for the purchase of the tanker truck. The recommendation that council approve the bid received from Fort Garry Fire Trucks in the amount of $564,718 plus HST for the purchase of the new tanker truck. And I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Are there any questions for Chief Parker? Counselor Kingma?
Through the mayor to the chief, who does the final inspection once that truck arrives here?
Yeah, we'll probably, throughout the whole process, we'll be in contact with Chris Pellick out in Manitoba. Through pictures and emails, we'll definitely go over the whole thing with him and maybe even have to make a trip out there just to have a look at it.
So Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you and your team not really do a deep dive on this to just get exactly what you want in the specifications? You're not getting extra, you're not paying for extra things that you didn't want. You're actually customizing the truck to the specifications that you wanted in the most efficient way possible.
That's correct. Yes, from the get-go, we wanted a tanker truck that had a small 20 horsepower gas pump on it. And throughout the process, it was miscommunicated that they thought we were wanting a pumper tanker with a large capacity size pump. And it took a few phone calls and some reaching out to the vendors to get that clearly stated.
I know it was a bit of a process, so job well done to everybody and Coulter for your help as well. Counselor Kingma?
Through the mayor, do we have experience with these people? Have we purchased from them before?
Not us specifically, but I just Coldstream, Middlesex Center has just bought a pumper tanker from the same company. So I just found that out 3 weeks ago, actually. So, yeah.
Well, and it's kind of a narrow field of who produces these too, is there not?
Sorry.
It's a narrow field, like there's not a lot of
That's
people
right.
that produce
Yes,
this. Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Dan or comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that council approve the bid received from Fort Garry Fire Trucks in the amount of $564,718 plus HST for the purchase of a new tanker truck. Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, Dan, you're up again here for the Fire Department 2024 first quarter summary, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, through you to council. The purpose of this report is to provide a summary of the activities for the Adelaide Metcalfe Fire Department in the first quarter of 2024, including calls by type, firefighter training, fire prevention activities, and public education. The report also provides a summary of the progress as it pertains to the fire services review and the health and safety gap audit. In summary, the first quarter of 2024, the Adelaide Metcalfe Fire Department has responded to 19 incidents in the township, including 2 small shed fires, 6 motor vehicle collisions, and the remainder of the calls being medical assists. There's a attachment at the bottom to specify the hours and times that the fire department spent. In training January, a training schedule was produced in the early part of January to give firefighters advance notice to upcoming training. This was identified in our fire services review. This enables firefighters to plan ahead in their regular busy work schedules. On January 13th of 2024, the fire department held their annual Christmas party, which was attended by 65 people. Joseph Grogman from the Ontario Fire Marshal's office, Sue Clark and Councillor Aaron Nordoff were in attendance. Max Langford was recognized by Joseph Grogman, Mayor Sue Clark, for his 50 years of service with the fire department. Several other firefighters received their 10, 15, and 25-year service medals. And our junior firefighters were thanked for their achievements to date. As well, 4 of our firefighters were recognized for their hard work and determination at a serious barn fire called last September on Langdon Drive. These firefighters were able to hold back the fire by advancing hose lines quickly and determining how to separate the fire from the adjoining 16,000 square foot hog barn. These actions saved the lives of many of the animals and saved the property owner a substantial amount of money and time. The following individuals were awarded Firefighter of the Year: Captain Dennis Bolton, Captain Richard Dortmans, Captain Brad DeBruin, and Firefighter Curtis Wilson. Training in January included PPE, including bunker gear, dressing drills, inspections, and self-contained breathing apparatus drills and inspections. Firefighter drags, carries were performed for conscious and unconscious victims. Firefighters also practice extricating victims from windowsills, on ground level, and elevated areas. February, ladder training was conducted by using different techniques of raising and lowering ladders, as well as safety procedures, leg locks, and advanced hose lines up ladders. Firefighters also practiced rapid intervention team situations, packaging down firefighters, and part of the RIT snare emergency radio communications were practiced. March, pump operations training was conducted at Parrish and Heimbecker's local elevator parking lot. This is a great chance for the new recruits to be involved in laying hose between pumpers, which we call relay pumping, as well as setting up quarter tanks for water supply and operating hose lines. And again, there's an attachment at the bottom for our training schedule for 2024. And our fire services review, the department has been working towards the review and implementation of updated standard operating guidelines as outlined in the FSR. Staff have completed the review of over 100 existing SOGs, have added 25 new SOGs, which reflect our current operations. And staff estimate 50% of the completion of the SOGs reviews to date. In our health and safety gap audit, as recommended in the health and safety audit, the township has moved towards the joint health and safety structure and has formalized a health and safety committee for the fire department and has appointed a health and safety representative for the public works and office departments. The department has completed and updated all of our safety data sheets for the materials at the fire hall. As recommended in the gap audit, safety data sheets are a summary of the documents that provide information about the hazards of products and advice about safety precautions. Safety data sheets are usually written by the manufacturer or supplier of the product and provide detailed information about the product, which is put into a quick reference binder in case of emergency. Every liquid or chemical used at the fire department, from toilet bowl cleaner to firefighting foam, now has a safety data sheet. Our fire prevention officer, Kyle Karasovich, as part of the ongoing fire inspection process, Kyle and myself attended a business which had hazardous activities not intended for the property. Orders against the property were issued under Section 21, subsection 3 of the Fire Prevention and Protection Act and submitted to the Fire Marshal's office. It should be noted that subject property was also issued orders through the Electrical Safety Authority. The owner of the property has generally complied with the order and is committed to completing the required cleanup. Staff will continue to monitor the issue to ensure ongoing compliance. And as the in March, the fire department was highlighted in the local magazine, Keeping It Local. I'm sure all council have ever seen that. So it was a great show for the fire department there. I'd be glad to take any questions or comments.
Okay, any questions for Chief Parker? Councillor Kingma?
Through the mayor, what's Kyle's last name?
I call him Big Show. Kyle Karasovich, if I say it fast.
And secondly, the fire department went door to door to check smoke detectors and CO detectors. Did that go okay?
Yes, I'm happy to say we went to 70 homes. It was interesting. We were quite welcomed everywhere we went. We did hand out about 6 or 7 smoke alarms. There were issues with, as time passes, people forget that the smoke alarms do have expiry dates. 10 years, they have to be replaced. So there was some of those issues. But no, it was very good. Good response.
Okay, any other questions for Dan? I think I speak for everybody when I say that Kyle's been a great addition as a fire prevention officer. He's really doing a great job and he's fit in pretty good. So we're happy that we have him on board. And on behalf of council and the community at large, please pass along to the fire team our gratitude and appreciation because we know we are very, very lucky to have the team that you have. And not all their calls are easy. So, and that's come to light most recently. All right. If there's no other questions, then can I have we have a recommendation that the fire department 2024 first quarter summary report be received for information. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is 7E on our agenda, the double surface treatment tender results, and I'll turn this over to our Public Works Manager, Coulter Cahill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Clark. Right here in the 2024 capital budget, council allocated funds towards the double surface treatment on Wardell Drive. This segment of roadway is a boundary road, as everybody knows, with North Middlesex. In conjunction with North Middlesex staff from both municipalities, worked really well together, appropriately planning and budgeting and preparing this project to be completed this year. This year's double service treatment on Wardell Drive closed with 3 bids. The successful bidder was Miller Paving Limited. This was based on the lowest price per unit. Given that this is a boundary road with North Middlesex, they will be billed for half of the entire capital project. Adelaide Metcalfe's portion will be $77,350 plus HST. I will note that we came in under budget by $300 plus HST for the double surface treatments. Recommendation is the council approved the tender received from Miller Paving Limited in the amount of $154,700 plus HST for the application of a double surface treatment on Wardell Drive. I will open up for any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Coulter. The key piece there is you did not come in over budget, so we always like to hear that. So are there any questions for Coulter? And it's good also to hear that you worked well with North Middlesex because we have to do that and it's nice when we can share costs. Okay, no questions, comments? Then we have a recommendation that council approve the tender received from Miller Paving Limited in the amount of $154,700 plus HST for the application of a double surface treatment on Wardell Drive. Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, is there any other business? Councillor Kingma?
Yeah, just a couple of little housekeeping items. I hope staff doesn't mind when I talk about this. Through the mayor to Johnny. Are we going to get an auditor's report next month?
Through Mayor Clerk to Councillor Kingma. Yeah, great question. We actually had our audit this past week and the auditors are scheduled to come to the second meeting in May.
Yeah, I think I saw the auditors in there. Was it this week or last week? Last week, yeah. So the timing's right. Councillor Kingma?
And another minor item to Johnny through the mayor. Does the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing have to send us a report on the annual repayment limit? And did we get that?
Through Mayor Clark to Councillor Kingma. Yeah, great question. That was just received. And that will be coming to council at the next council meeting.
Okay, anything else? I think the Optimist, they had a bottle drive on Saturday. I don't know how that went, but hopefully they made a few bucks because they do put that money back into the community. All right, any other business? Last call? All right, seeing that we have none, we have a recommendation that bylaw 28 of 2024, the tile drain loan for Seldom Rest Family Farms Limited, bylaw 29 of 2024, the agreement for IT services with the County of Middlesex, bylaw 30 of 2024, the agreement for the fire tanker truck purchase with Gary Fire Trucks, and bylaw 31 of 2024, the agreement for the double surface treatment for Miller Paving Limited, and bylaw 32 of 2024 confirming April 15th, 2024, received first, second, third, and final readings. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Counselor McKinnon, seconded by Counselor Kingma. All in favor, and that's carried. Could I have a motion to adjourn at 8:15 PM? Moved by Counselor Nordoff, seconded by Counselor Kingma. All in favor, and that's carried. Thank you.